today I am going to talk all about my journey and experience of breastfeeding. As we are still in August, this is the Breastfeeding Awareness Month, so I thought it would be a good chance and time for me to share my journey and my experience. So let's get into it. So my child, James, is going to be 2 next month. So he is 2 years old in September, and I stopped breastfeeding at the start of this month, actually. So my journey of breastfeeding literally took nearly 2 years, and that's not exactly what I had expected to breastfeed for in terms of time length. I honestly thought I would have stopped breastfeeding after 6 months. That was my understanding and expectation of what breastfeeding was going to be like. And research says that you can breastfeed up until 2 years and above. I just still thought that when they started teething and getting their teeth and going on to solid food, you would just naturally stop. And when my little one was 6 months old, he was still completely breastfeeding. He did start to have teeth, although his teeth didn't properly come in until he was around 1 year old, but he was certainly starting on his solid foods. And I still thought, okay, we'll start maybe the weaning process once those teeth come in. When he turned 1 year old, his teeth started to come in and I was still breastfeeding. And my expectations or my reality just kind of took a different kind of turn with it, because it just naturally felt good for me to continue breastfeeding. I didn't have any pain while he was teething. He didn't really bite down or anything like that while breastfeeding, and he was still wanting it. He was still taking in milk and seeming like he wanted more and wanted to keep his normal feeds. He was almost asking for it and just wanting it. So I continued breastfeeding. He was mostly on solids now during the day as well, and had a formula bottle at night, but he was generally still breastfeeding for sleep time and throughout the night. And it was probably about 6 months ago that I decided we were going to start really weaning him off now and getting into more of a consistent routine with it. And we decided, okay, let's just start dropping some of the feeds. And we did that initially. We dropped all of the daytime feeds, and it was just nighttime, and I think for the nap time as well. And then there was a little regression that we had where it just still naturally, I just kept breastfeeding and to comfort him as well. And I really noticed that it was just for comfort towards the end. And then last month, just before the start of August, I decided that is going to be it. We're going to stop the nighttime feeds. And we started to gently, gradually stop the nighttime feeds. So he would have like one to get to sleep, then maybe again we would breastfeed like 12 o'clock at night, and then again maybe 3 in the morning, and until he woke up at 6. He would, because we co-sleep, so we are co-sleepers, and that's made it quite natural for me just to lie and breastfeed him. And when he wakes up in the night, it's just quick and easy just to feed him, and he goes straight back to sleep again. So there's not that getting up and down and wanting them just to sleep in their bed or anything like that I had to do. So it was kind of just easy to do it that way. And then eventually we got down to the 1 feed before bedtime. And it was quite a struggle. He would cry in the night, but I think it was just 1 or 2 nights of really crying, having to be rocked to sleep and told no, it's no more breastfeeding, that he eventually he just slept through the night. He just accepted it, and the nights after that he just slept straight through. And almost I thought to myself, I should have done this earlier, but I think it was the right timing, and it just was easier to explain to him, and eventually it was just done. Like, he was able just to completely stop. And the last feed just naturally just went away, and he was having a bottle before bed and just then would fall asleep. So that's now where we are. So I've completely stopped breastfeeding, and I would say that during this whole journey of breastfeeding, I have loved it. I have genuinely really enjoyed breastfeeding. It was always what I wanted to do. I chose to obviously breastfeed, and I was able to, because I know a lot of people sometimes struggle with either latching or lip and tongue ties and all these things, or just through the demand of having to go back to work and like the the hassle of maybe pumping and doing all the expressing and things like that. So for me, being able to do that was such a blessing. I'm so grateful that I was able to breastfeed for as long as I did, and that I did the kind of gentle, gradual weaning. I think that was right for us, and it really worked well. And I really felt that bond as well between me and him during my breastfeeding time. And it's something that's really special, I think, and unless you go through it, it's hard to sometimes explain. But if anybody is watching this and are thinking or are planning to breastfeed or are about to breastfeed or are in the middle of breastfeeding, or if you're maybe struggling and trying to keep going, I honestly think it's the best thing for the baby if you can. And as a mum and going through that experience, I really loved that time, and I kind of almost miss it now a little bit, but it's right. I'm kind of glad it stopped now, but it was just a beautiful time. I really definitely would recommend breastfeeding if you can, and I really enjoyed my experience. One thing I will say though is that at the end of breastfeeding, so this has just happened to me the last couple of weeks, as I've now finished breastfeeding. I think it was about 1 to 2 weeks after I started feeling pain in my breast. There was actually lumps. It was very painful. I actually developed a little bit of mastitis. There was blocked ducts there. I had to go on antibiotics and use a hot compress, which I used a hot water bottle, and I had to kind of apply that to my breast and then have to squeeze out little bits at a time, and do that for a few days till it all cleared up and completely finished. And it was so painful experience to go through, and there's probably people out there that maybe experienced it or are currently breastfeeding or maybe weaning, and this might be happening to you. It is the number one thing to try and avoid, I must say. And I think if you are weaning now, just be mindful that mastitis doesn't just happen at the beginning of breastfeeding when you're kind of getting that engorgement as the breast milk supply is kind of coming in and getting much more as your baby feeds on you, and is getting into the rhythm of feeding. It can happen at the end of the process, which I didn't realise until I went through it, but it can happen while you're weaning off as well. Even if you're gradually weaning your child, you might find a week later that it's pain. So just be mindful of that if this is happening to you. Seek help immediately, because mastitis, if left untreated, can be harmful to you and your body. So make sure you are checking out for any lumps when you're at the weaning process as well, so you can always get checked out. So overall, in a nutshell, I've loved my breastfeeding journey and experience. I hope you've enjoyed this video and got something from it. Like this video if you've liked it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.